everybody. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram live broadcast. I am very much looking forward to my guest this week. It is really an iconic sommelier and kind of definer of wine in America. This is Paul Grieco, the owner and founder of Terroir. I'm flying the flag with the shirt that I'm wearing today. I can't wait to talk to him. But as I typically do, I am going to share some pictures of what's going on at the vineyard while we wait for everybody to join. So let me start with what's going on in the vineyard. We are probably 95% done with harvest. So there's a few little things that are still out there. There's a little bit of Mourvedre, you can see right there. There's a few cleanup picks. There's a little bit of Grenache out there. A little bit of Grenache that I found yesterday. And then beyond that, things are starting to look kind of fallish. Share a couple pictures of what it looks like. You can see the vines starting to change color a little bit. There's a picture of some Counoise out there. The big work right now is happening in the cellar. You can see the harvest chalkboard is almost full. We have the last few things coming up probably by the end of this week or the very beginning of next week. We are pressing things off. We pressed off our tiny lot of Muscardin. It looks like we do have enough to make one barrel, which is super exciting. We've never had that before. We are also doing all the normal work, the punch downs and the pump overs. The cellar's really still very full. We're putting together the rosé. We've been pulling some Saignets for the Dianthus. We have the last Patelin rosé lot come in today. We are taking barrels that are maybe not fermenting quite as fast as we hoped they would be. Taking those outside, letting them warm up during the day. Days have been nice. It's supposed to be around 90 today, but it's been cold at night. So the average temperature has been cold. The cellar's been cold. And so giving these a little boost by bringing them outside is just giving them a little bit of help. Last thing that we're doing, we are getting ready. It feels weird. I'm sharing a picture of myself in an Instagram live thing, but we are getting ready to do a virtual pickup party for our wine club members this Friday. So if you are a Tablas Creek Wine Club member, you may have gotten these wine packs that we did in conjunction with Master of the World, whose Master Somm, Evan Goldstein, I had as a guest a couple months ago. But these are little taster packs, but you don't need to have had one of the taster packs in order to join us. Just join us. It'll be me and Neil and Chelsea talking about the harvest so far, talking about the new wines that we're releasing, and just giving people a chance to interact and have questions if they can't make it here for the pickup party that's coming in a couple weeks. And honestly, well, even if you are coming, go ahead and join us anyway for a bit of it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I hope that gives you a little taste of what's going on. Conditions look good. It's been kind of perfect for the last 3 weeks since that heat wave broke. The little bit of rain that we got in its aftermath was welcome. Didn't cause any problems. Okay, so I'm going to invite Paul to join now. I saw Terroir come through in the notifications. So let me see that. So there it is. Okay, joining from the Terroir NY account. So I just sent the invitation off. This will be. Hey, how you doing, Paul?
Jason, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Cool.
Great. I didn't really give people a huge introduction into who you are when I started. I always like to do that once people join. But you are, to my mind, one of the kind of defining somms of the generation of people who kind of brought wine to the masses in America. So you're currently, are you at Terroir right now?
This is my sanctum sanctorum. The people I'm with know that this cup of coffee must be permanently filled to the brim. So yes, I am at my place of wonders called Terroir in Jason, I will correct you about, I apologize for that, that I was also present at the wedding at Cana with a dude named Jesus. So I helped then bring wine to, well, water first, and then somehow some shit happened. And, you know, the masses were no longer thirsty. So I've been doing it a long time.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that we're talking millennia, not just decades.
Perfect.
I am flying the Terroir flag from the shirt that from the night that I did the guest psalm there a few years ago after we did the 20th anniversary tasting at Tablas Creek. So, as people who watch these regularly know, this is one of my favorite shirts. I wear it a lot.
Well, the New York Times also showed you wearing that bloody shirt, and my mom never pays attention to what I do unless it's in the New York Times, and seeing you wearing that shirt in the New York Times made my mom's year. So big gratitude for that.
I am happy to help however I can. Okay, so I usually like to start by asking people to kind of talk about their path into wine. Was wine a thing that was on your family table growing up, or was it something you came to later? And if so, how?
Yes, and a very big no. I grew up in a restaurant family in Toronto, Canada. I'm third generation. My grandfather opened a restaurant called La Scala, very formal Italian restaurant up in Canada, arguably the first of its type in 1961. My father joined him on that first day. My father had come from the marketing world, working for a pasta company, and I was literally born at that restaurant in 1965. I think my father, I guess they call this an apocryphal tale. He was working at the restaurant and got the phone call from the hospital that I was about to be born, and he left the floor of the restaurant and went to the hospital, and then I think very much came back to work, type of dude that he was. So that would imply that on the Grieco family table, there was always wine and certain types of food. And while there was always food, wine was not an active part of my youth. I can recall my parents drinking more Canadian Club and soda than I can them having a bottle of wine and giving their four boys a taste of the wine to indoctrinate us into this world. So my beverage of choice as a teenager was milk. I wanted to play soccer. I was focused on building my bones and blah, blah, blah. So I did not start drinking wine until my later teenage years, and all hail Blue Nun. Jason, I hope there are some people in our conversation today who know what Blue Nun is, and if they don't, they should then get their parents and grandparents on the phone, and they will know what the hell Blue Nun was. Still is, it's still made, but it was what Yellowtail is today, what KJ Reserve Chardonnay was in the 90s, what Matus Rosé was in the 70s. Blue Nun, a dry, dry-ish, I guess is the way to think about it. Wine from Germany was the world's most popular wine in the late 50s, 60s, and early 70s. So that was my my gateway drug, so to speak. But then when I started working at the family restaurant when I was 20, that's when I made up for lost ground.
Cool. So, in that era, what were the kind of things that were on your family restaurant wine list? What were you seeing at that point?
Listen, we formal, old school Italian, but I must interject once again. This was in Canada. And just to remind everyone, there are 10 provinces north of the border, and each one of those provinces has a liquor control board, I guess very much like Pennsylvania, and there's some other states in this country with them. And so all of the alcoholic beverages had to be bought through the government store. So the selection was relatively minimal. So if I was to look at that list that I was part of back in the 1980s today, I would say that it was a pretty generic list of Italian wine, admittedly. The Italian wine world was changing in the 1980s with the Super Tuscans, with the rise of Barbaresco Barolo. And because I went to Italy once a year back then, I got introduced to all of that stuff. So I feel myself blessed that where a lot of my peers at that time, Jason, their entree into the world of wine was France. and they would learn those rules and regulations, and they would revere those wines. I had certainly heard of those wines, but my roadmap that I had to follow was Italy, and it was chaos then. And so I eventually learned that if I could get a handle on Italy, the rest of the goddamn wine world was easy peasy. And this was still a time when an aspiring somm, you sat down and you learned the goddamn laws of a wine country. If you were going to start learning about Spanish wine, you didn't begin with, well, what are the grapes in Rioja and where's Rioja versus that? No. You learned rules and regulations. Now, I think who gives a goddamn about any of that shit? Does anyone really care that to have Cabernet written on the label of a wine out in California, it needs to be, what is it? Is it 75%, Jason, still?
It is. It's sort of an embarrassingly low total.
I'm sure we'll get there later on, but you know, those types of numbers, and I don't think we need to learn about that. But I did that with Italy, and the rest of the wine world was easy peasy to me.
Do you feel like your start in Italy sort of influenced the way that you think about wine in a more fundamental way?
100%, because Italy back then, it's odd to think that Barolo Barbaresco today once had a point where it was struggling to express its reputation, its greatness. Now, if you and your mates out on the West Coast were to talk about the great wines of the world, you would easily say Barolo Barbaresco, Amarone, Brunello, blah, blah, blah. But back then, no way in hell would an Italian wine be on that list. Maybe if you were a little bit more traveled and well-read, you could say Brunello di Montalcino because Beyond di Santi was one of. But in general, Italian wines were just meant to be drunk with abandon to accompany that very simple pasta dish on a Friday night. Blah, that was all cool and good. So as Italy was fighting an uphill battle to gain recognition, I embraced that stuff, and hitting the streets to talk about, to promote, if I could use that word, to entice people to drink that stuff, it was a little bit of a battle. And so I've carried that throughout my career, which is why I guess you are sort of maybe implying that at Terroir, we fight the good fight today for all of those grapes and wines and producers and regions that do not get what we believe to be the respect that a lot of other regions on the planet get. So we're still fighting a battle.
Yeah, and I love the kind of, I don't know if egalitarian is the right word, but the idea that like there's not just a hierarchy of like the important grapes that you need to know. I love the way that you present wine at Terroir is wide-ranging and broad and inclusive and exciting. Like, I think that's one of the things that maybe people take for granted now, but like is a phenomenon that I think you had a role in creating, that kind of creating the level of respect for these like formerly lesser grapes or lesser regions. Like I'm putting lesser in quotes in that they were probably not in the master sommelier exams in the 1990s.
Oh, listen, if I was a smarter dude, and I am a long way from ever being close to that title, I should have written the goddamn master sommelier exam back in the late 70s, early 80s, where it was relatively easy. As the people who are doing that now, who are studying for that exam, who are sitting that exam, the level, the amount of knowledge they must have is insane. And I would say to be a wine drinker today, to be a starting wine drinker today, oh my God, the world is your oyster, goddammit. You never have to worry about going into a wine store and grabbing a bottle that is not qualitatively sound. You may not like it, but it is a sound wine. Back when, I began my journey, the world of wine was much smaller. When we spoke about Spain, let's put sherry aside, we only really spoke about Rioja. When we spoke about Portugal, we only spoke about port. When we spoke about Italy, it was Chianti, Brunello, maybe, and other cheap and cheerful wines that we would just glug on a weekend night. Valpolicella, Suave, blah, blah, blah. And so I got off. Maybe let me have a sip of coffee to get back on track here. Hold on. So I am thankful for the day that I got into wine when the world of wine was smaller. And its size today is so awesome. And I am envious of all of those people just starting their wine journey when the path, the way forward is so chock-a-block full of cool shit to encounter. And at the same time, Jason, it is intimidating as shit. How do you actually navigate your way through this thing? So I guess at the end of the day, when it comes to what we do at Terroir, we are still excited by the world of wine. We get up every day and say to ourselves, what new grape wine region producer am I going to encounter today? And that invariably finds its way onto our list. We are traditionalists, we are historians, we revere the stuff that came before, but we also at the same time equally prize all of the new stuff that's happening in this incredible world of ours, which might be the shit that you're doing out in California, even though you've been doing it for a few decades now.
Yeah, I mean, it is an unbelievably big and diverse world of wine, and I've been thinking recently that the United States is pretty uniquely positioned to enjoy this diversity because it's one of the rare countries that has a vibrant domestic wine production scene and also is a major importer. So we sort of get a little bit of the best of both worlds. You get the great wines from everywhere around the world. You get, I mean, what are there now? 6,000 wineries in America in all 50 states. I mean, some massive number. I'm happy I'm not studying for a wine exam. I agree totally with you. I actually had 2 weeks ago, my guest was Jancis Robinson, and she made a similar comment that
Whoa, hold on a sec. Jancis Robinson was on this goddamn thing? Let me do a few more shirt buttons because I better be more respectful to this little conversation we're having. Holy shit. Okay, go on. Keep going.
But she had a very similar comment, which was that like when she was first starting, she was first writing about wine, first becoming a master of wine. It was a much smaller wine world and many fewer things to wrap your arms around. But the fact that wine is history and wine is geography and wine is geology and wine is so many other pieces of culture. I love that it is as diverse as it is, and that diversity is available to us here in America.
Yeah, listen, I think I hold on equal stature all of the regions that we have discovered, reacquainted ourselves with in Europe or the New World or whatever it be, but of a thrilling note, and you said it a moment ago, whether you want to believe it or not, we are the United States of wine. All 50 states bottle wine, may not grow grapes and produce it that way, but they bottle wine. So we are a wine producing nation, hopefully on our way to being a wine consuming nation. So there is enough cool stuff happening in this country alone to put together a thrilling wine program that is not just about California, Washington, Oregon, New York, Texas, Virginia. Holy smokies, I've had as much pride in my joint is getting the newest release from a favorite producer on Mount Etna as I do getting a Chamberchamp from Pennsylvania, or getting a Chardonnay from Connecticut, or a Vidal Blanc from Rhode Island, Michigan, holy smogolis. And then what's going on in your state of California, there's new and crazy. California is just as hot and cool and sexy today as a wine producing nation, if we're allowed to say that, as any other wine country on the planet. So it is a most exciting time for wine.
Awesome. I could not agree with that more.
Jancis Robinson, God damn it. Got to follow in that. How am I supposed to do that?
Yeah, honestly, it was a little hard for me to figure out like who could I invite like after like I feel like that's the pinnacle of the pyramid at that point. Like what am I going to do to top that? So um so this you are who I chose. Um
I'm going
so
to call my mother after this because she better pay attention to me now when I call. But anyway,
absolutely. So how did you end up in New York? What was the how did that happen?
for anyone who has grown up in a family business, they know that they are glorious. And I will say that, listen, for the years that I worked at my family restaurant, which was 5, I worked every day with my grandfather, my grandmother, my father, my mom. Oh my God, unbelievable. Unbelievable, truly, the relationship I got to have, especially with my grandfather, because he taught me the most about hospitality. I did not really learn about wine from my family members. I did all of that shit on my own. But also, family businesses, boom, boom, boom. And so, I have no idea how this works. I have to ask my therapist about this one day. I found in conversations with my grandfather that we were like this, compatible. Whatever we were talking about, we were very much of similar minds. My father and I, all the time. So when I would see my mom, I would complain about my father. When my father would, go home at night to be with his wife, he would complain about me. So truly, no exaggeration, my mother sat me down one day and said, listen, you complain about your father complains about you. If I have to make a choice between the two of you, I'm choosing your father. Like, damn. All right. And our restaurant was such that the reputation of it, that for me to leave and go to another joint in Toronto, I felt would really hurt my father. But I could no longer stay there because the stuff I wanted to do in our old school restaurant to modernize it, as the restaurant world was changing dramatically in the 1980s into the 90s. And ours was very much dark red carpets, golden drapes, big Renaissance art on the wall, all the servers in tuxedos. Like, holy shit. It is no exaggeration to say, Jason, that all of our guests were dying. And so I wanted to make changes. I couldn't make them. Where should I go to learn, to grow? The greatest restaurant city on the planet, New York City. So here I came in 1991.
And when you moved to New York, what were you doing at that point?
I arrived and I started walking the streets and applying for jobs. And I happened upon a restaurant called Remy, which at the time was a very important and new and successful Italian restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. The gentleman who was the GM at the time, Chris Cannon, became my best friend, and I got a job there. I was there for 3 months, and I got a phone call saying that my grandfather was on his deathbed to come home. I came home, and this is the fact, too. I'm not making shit up just for you on this Wednesday afternoon. He pulled me in close to him, and he whispered in my ear, he said, Paul, 3 things. Stay in New York. Do not come back to Toronto. Get married and move to Queens. Now, I've done 1 and 2. Queens, with all due respect to one of the great boroughs of New York City, I have no idea what Queens was about, but I have yet to do that. So I came back from him passing away and the funeral, and I walked into the restaurant, Remy, where I was just a server, and I said, okay, I'm back. Did anything happen in my absence? And they said, well, as a matter of fact, one of the managers left. And I said, oh, well, could I put my hat in that job ring? And they knew of my background, but I'm like, this is New York. Why would you hire some pariah from Toronto to work in this unbelievable restaurant? And I got the job. And that showed me that I could make it and be a contributor in this incredible market that is New York City.
So it was a while where you were in restaurants doing fine dining. Was there, when you started Terroir, and this was what, like 05, 06? When did you
08
start
is when
Terroir?
the first Terroir opened.
08, okay. Was there something about that experience, about the sort of the way that fine dining kind of defined wine that you felt like you wanted to do differently in Terroir?
You, Jason, attribute some sense of prescience and intelligence to my brain, and neither of those things exist in this world that is Paul Greco.
Okay. I would argue against that, but anyway, go ahead.
But my partner at the time, Marco Canora, and I, we had both worked together at Gramercy Tavern, where I worked in the late 90s, early O's. And we opened up a restaurant called Hearth in 2003. And that was our attempt at taking a Gramercy Tavern 3-star focus on food and lowering the bar in terms of the formality of service and hospitality.
Right.
And then in late 07, a gentleman knocked on our front door in the afternoon and said that, hey, I own this building down the street. There's a space that I think would be cool for you guys. Why don't you have a look? You seem to be successful. So we had a look, and it was super small, 500 square feet, super cheap, $2,000 a month rent. And we're looking at each other going, okay, fine, what can we do? And, it's like, well, 500 feet. Jason, I don't know about you, but I had a sandbox when I was a kid that was 500 square feet. And as I started to think about that, I'm like, oh my God, sandbox. How cool is that shit? Like, back as kids, it was our toys, our friends, our rules in our sandbox. Boom. So we looked at that space as that we could do anything we want. And that's where the idea of Terroir came about. I had no great desire in all the years leading up to that to do a wine bar. I was a restaurant guy through and through. That food came first, wine comes second. And to be honest, I still very much feel that way. I feel that wine is a condiment to food. I don't lead my meals with the grape juice. But anyway, so we opened up this wine bar called Terroir. We brought the food down the street from Hearth. It was 100 feet away, and we shared the wine program. And in thinking again about this sandbox, it was like, well, $2,000 a month rent. Labor is going to be low because it could only hold 3 staff members and 25 guests. It's like, shit, I can do whatever I want because I'm an arrogant person to begin with, but financially, we're not at risk here. So all of these things that wine people have talked about, I guess, Jason, the most obvious one when you think about me and Terroir is Riesling. And so, and how would they show their love of Riesling, Jason? Well, they'd have one by the glass, and that would be it. And it would be one of a singular style in the sweeter direction. And so I'm like, forgive my language, but motherfuckers, don't tell me that you love Riesling and you might once or twice a year stick one on the list because your love of Pinot Noir is manifest. I see that shit up and down your wine list, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, so smarty pants, all of these things. I hope that dog is in your background rather than running around my restaurant.
My background. Hey, Sadie.
Okay, good. So it was an opportunity to do all of these things that I had thought about. So, we got to the first summer after we opened Terroir. It's like, well, summer of Riesling. Let's only serve Riesling by the glass. And we did it. And everyone hated it. Staff hated it. Guests hated it. My partner hated it. It's eventually why we broke up. I can't say our investors hated it because we didn't lose our shirts. We still could pay the rent and the blah, blah, blah. And so we were able to do stuff then that maybe today, Jason, resonates in a much bigger way, that we had chutzpah to do these things. And maybe we had a little bit of that, but it was just a mindset of, I don't give a damn, because I financially didn't have to give a damn. I was lucky. And then, this risk taking that one thinks of Psalms doing when they put, this grape or wine or whatever on the, please, Jesus Christ. We as Psalms, we're not rock stars. Please don't anyone ever think that again. All we're doing, like Jason, you're the rock star. You do all the heavy lifting to make that wine. And then all I do is open my doors. You come and taste me. I buy a case. I stick it. That's all I'm doing. So I am but a platform to give rock stars the opportunity to show their wares, and I get to sing their praises in my humble little joint. And I guess I should emphasize again that at Terroir, because I'm the individual who signs the checks, I do truly get to do whatever I want.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about like the summer of Riesling more generally, because it's more than just what you do at Terroir now. I mean, it's become kind of a national movement. Maybe it's an international movement. I don't even know. Like, can you talk about the evolution of the summer of Riesling?
Yeah, certainly. It began in '08. It was just our little joint, Terroir. We did it. And again, I like to move in broad, sweeping gestures. So for us, summer begins on June 21st and ends on September 21st. It's 94 goddamn days. It's not just July and August. So it was truly a quarter of the year was dedicated to Riesling. We finished it, done, buried. We get to '09. The staff looks at me in the spring of '09 and says, "You're not going to do that thing again, are you?" And that's all I need to say, you know what? Oh, yes, we are. So we did it the second year. And then in 2010, we happened to open the second Terroir in Tribeca. And I did the summer of Riesling here. And all of a sudden, the press is like, oh my God, there's a movement here. What is going on? So they started to write about this thing called Summer of Riesling because 2 restaurants were doing it. And then with all of our restaurant friends around the country, we asked if they would join in. And they chose to do it. We never asked them to do what we did, which was truly, Jason, that every single white wine we poured by the glass was only Riesling. That's insane. But we did it. And you know what? It's not so insane because every style of white wine that people enjoy, save for an oak-infused, tinged wine, can be found stylistically in the world of Riesling, plus some other styles that no other grape can do. So we thought we could take care of all of your bloody needs. And then, you know, and it wasn't just Germany, it was the world of Riesling. We were equal promoters of Riesling wherever the hell it was grown. And then certainly through the early teens, many other restaurants joined in. And did it become a movement, all of those things? And can you ask from a marketing PR point of view, was it a success? Well, some looked at it and said, okay, we can measure this shit. Let's think about Germany. Because if in 2007, we shipped X number of cases, well, what did we ship in '08, '09? Did Summer of Riesling have an effect of it? And the bottom line is that linear path you cannot apply to the world of wine because we have to talk about vintages where they are increased production, all of that shit. And to be honest, Jason, I'm not a numbers guy in that I never began this thing trying to sell more. All we did with the Summer of Riesling was to change the conversation of Riesling. So Jason, I think today, if there is any lingering effects of the Summer of Riesling, and we still celebrate it at Terroir, is that the conversation of Riesling is vitally different. I see in our interactions with wine drinkers, when they're confronted with a wine list with 40 Rieslings by the glass at Terroir, all of these pages, t-shirts, all of the marketing shit that we do surrounding it, that the response is, cool, tell me about it. As opposed to, you know, with our parents or back in the 90s when people would say, no goddamn way am I drinking Riesling because it's always sweet. That statement rarely, if ever, rears its head today. That, I think, is the success of Summer of Riesling.
Awesome. So it's been half an hour. I have like 5 more questions I want to ask you, but I'm gonna limit it to 2.
I still have half a cup of coffee, so I'm good to go. Ask away, dude.
So one of them is like, are there things that are kind of off the beaten path? Not, I mean, beyond the things that you've talked about. Are there things that you're super excited about now that you think need to be on people's radars, deserve to be on people's radars more in the world of wine?
100%, the entirety of the world of wine. I'm a little scared, Jason, to be honest with you, because to be a brand new consumer of alcoholic beverages today, to turn 21, look at the world in front of you. The world of beer is massive. The world of spirits, if only in America, the world of spirits is huge. Then you have the world of wine. And if you're looking for additional substances that can make you feel different, as alcohol and wine does, then we have the whole, marijuana world of things. So the number of different drugs that people can access to expand the world, we have to get off our asses and be a little bit more creative about how we are thinking about wine and how we're interacting and doing all of those things. Anyway, a long-winded way of saying the entirety of the world of wine still excites us, and I'm being truthful. And I'm just excited by Bordeaux, which one could accuse of being a little bit staid and conservative. And why would I say that? Because there's 8,000 chateaux in that goddamn wine region, the biggest by far. But there are still so many producers that we know almost nothing about. And there is a movement in this very staid conservative place to move towards organic biodynamic farming, to be a little bit more conscientious in the vineyard and in the winery and do different things. So that thrills the shit out of me, Jason, just as it does finding a cool wine from Mount Etna or discovering a new region in Czechoslovakia or the former Eastern Europe or my homeland of Canada, or whatever it might be. And all I would ask, and you're going to hate me for saying this, goddammit, is that why would you ever drink the same wine twice? It's a world of wine, and if you're going to crack a bottle every goddamn day, that's 365 opportunities to engage. All I can tell you about my state of New York, the greatest wine market on the planet Earth, is that at this moment in time, Jason, there are 55,000 different wines that I can buy. Holy lordy. Oh, to be me, to make those decisions. So those things, Jason, are what excite me. And I know you're looking for a grape, a region, maybe a producer and all of that. The entirety of the world of wine should excite us when we get up in the goddamn morning, because that day will be a voyage of discovery. When you pull that cork, that lunch, that dinner time, whatever the hell it may be. So everything in its entirety, we love. Question number 2.
Well, I think you just highlighted why when I started publicizing that you were going to be my guest, I had probably a dozen people reach out to say, yeah, that Terroir is my first stop whenever I go to New York, when I'm coming in from out of town, just because I know I'm going to see stuff that I've never seen before that's going to be fun. So,
well, listen, dude, my goal, if I can have a goal in this restaurant world of ours, is that we're one day going to have a restaurant with a wine list where nothing will be written down. And that wine list will be contained up here. And all we will do with you, Jason, when you come to see us, is just engage in the conversation of wine, because that ultimately is what wine does. It brings you and I together to talk about whatever we want, and we have this cool, yummy beverage in front of us that is expanding our worldview. That transportational nature of wine is the goddamn shit. So I apologize for going over time. My mom would, if she was here, would say I'm a long-winded individual. I will try to do better next time.
No, you have nothing to apologize for. Last question is, so people who want to hear more about what you're doing and the things that you're excited about. I mean, obviously, if they're in New York, head down to Tribeca, go to Terroir. What else should they do? How do they stay up with you?
First of all, they should see a doctor if they actually want to do stuff like that. There's everything good and bad in the Paul Grieco wine world. But yes, come to Terroir in New York. I have dreams and aspirations of, a book, a TV show, all of that. Who knows? I need more goddamn coffee to engage in all of that shit. But just come to New York, come to Terroir, reach out to us via email. As you can tell, I love to talk, goddammit. So just call and we'll talk. It's all cool.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody who logged on and joined us. This has been a treat. I look forward to seeing you hopefully in New York sometime soon. Well, Even like
Listen,
out here
Jason,
in California.
I know I got to come out there, but you'll probably put me to work, and that will probably be a very bad day at the winery. But kudos on everything you're doing. Best of luck. Where's the harvest at, dude? Did you say that at the beginning and I missed it?
You did. It's okay. We're like 95% done. Just the last little tail end of the fewest things, like Mourvedre and Counoise, last ripening stuff, last pass through the Grenache that was still a little pink when we picked the bulk of it 2-3 weeks ago. So we're probably a week from being done, but like all the stress is off.
You don't have any bags under around your eyes. No more late nights for you, or what's going on there?
I'm a really good makeup artist in back.
Nice, strong. Jason, be good, man. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody. See you all
Cheers.
soon.